All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Money Talks. I'm your host, Bill Barhydt, founder and CEO at Abra. We have a lot to get to today. So, we've got a really cool show for you. We've got Charlie Lee, the founder of Litecoin, joining us. We've got some Abra announcements. We've got a whole bunch of questions teed up from all over the world already. We're streaming on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, of course. We've got now thousands upon thousands of viewers a week. Thanks for your support for this. I just love doing this for all of you. And the more feedback we get, the more fun it gets, and it just builds on itself. So thanks so much for the support for doing this. All right. So first things first, um, we've got Abra interest accounts. So last week, I told you that we were raising rates on Ethereum to, I believe, 5%. We're at 4.5% for Bitcoin deposits, 10% still. Phenomenal rate for US dollar deposits. And this week, I'm thrilled to announce that we've added Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash to our Abra interest account product. So that means that you'll now be able to earn 4.5% on your Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin deposits, and 5% on Ethereum deposits, and of course, 10% on your US dollar deposits. So if you haven't downloaded Abra already, you should do it right now because it's going to be a lot easier to follow the demos during the show as we go on. Okay, so that's that. We've got a bunch of topics that I want to get to. Um, the first is let me talk about Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin is really it's going through one of the best setups I've ever seen for an asset price of any kind, really, of any asset type, to move dramatically higher. And there's no guarantee that this is going to happen. I'm giving you my own opinion, not investment advice, as I always like to remind you. But I've been so excited by this setup on Bitcoin that I've personally decided to increase my exposure to Bitcoin. And I've written a couple of tweet storms on this topic. There's so many factors that are in Bitcoin's favor right now. Let me just list a few, and I'm just going to go through them fairly quickly. Bitcoin has now been above $10,000, 10K, for 10 straight weeks. This has been shrugging off Trump's hospitalization. It's been shrugging off the BitMEX news, the news this morning, or actually the news yesterday morning, my time, that the UK was banning Bitcoin related derivatives. Bitcoin has been less volatile than many stocks this year, while its price has appreciated over 40% in 2020, with a nice run up to 11K this morning, or we're pushing 11K, I believe. I think we just passed, sorry, pushing 11,100 right now. So a nice run up of about 5% over the last couple of days. So looking at the technical analysis, the long-term chart is showing this super bullish descending triangle pattern, which is probably one of the most bullish technical continuation patterns you can have. Tether, I look at Tether deposits and Tether activity as a really good leading indicator as to where Bitcoin may go. We've seen an additional $5 billion in deposits and inflows into Tether over the last few days and weeks. Tether now being worth more than 15 billion. Invariably, those deposits have found their way into Bitcoin, right? Chinese state-owned media has made coordinated reports describing cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, as this year's top performing investments, right? Super bullish for Bitcoin. And of course, this idea that as a hard asset with stock to flow that will eventually approach infinity, Bitcoin is the perfect hedge against which the government is now trying to dramatically increase, all super bullish for Bitcoin. So one of the things that I like to look at is this, what I call volatility. Volatility is basically a relative measure for how much an asset's price is moving over any given time frame. The more the asset price moves up or down in any given time frame, the more volatile we say that asset is relative to other assets. Here you can see a chart of Bitcoin's 30-day volatility measurement going back about 5 years. Where we are right now, is in the lower right corner. What it's showing us is that the volatility is very low by historical standards. There's been about 6 periods over the last 5 years where volatility has reached that kind of 20% range, meaning that the price moves in a band of up and down 20 points over the course of a 30-day period. By Bitcoin standards, that's a very low volatility number. Every single time, there's been 6 times that Bitcoin has reached this historic 20 measurement of 20% volatility, it has launched significantly, meaning the price has changed significantly in the following few weeks. Now, 5 out of 6 times it has exploded to the upside. One time it's exploded to the downside. But in every case, there's been a big, big movement. Okay, so we can see now that Bitcoin, just a few minutes ago, I'm looking at the chart that I just put up here on the screen, and Bitcoin looks like it has just passed 11,100. I'm sorry, it's down a little bit, but it's right around that 11,100 mark, which again, super bullish, right? So that's fantastic news, and we'll continue to track that. Nothing goes straight up, nothing goes straight down. We're bullish on Bitcoin at Abra, but invest wisely, be comfortable with what you're doing. Okay, so again, things are looking super interesting on the Bitcoin front. A lot of really crazy news this past week out of myriad governments and government-related actions in the cryptocurrency space. Just as we went to press with our newsletter last year, and we briefly talked about it on the show last week, the government in the United States sued BitMEX, the largest futures exchange in the cryptocurrency markets. BitMEX appears to be continuing running, although I'm sure outflows via U.S. accounts are up significantly, and we'll look with a careful eye as to what's going to happen with BitMEX in the coming weeks and months. I'm sure it's going to take months, if not years, for all of this to play out with BitMEX. Okay, so more interesting government news. Let's see. So in the UK, announced that they're banning the sale of crypto derivatives to retail consumers starting in January of next year. This is a big deal. So in the UK, a big percentage of retail trading is done via these derivative products. Most of them are unavailable to US consumers. So for example, CFDs, contracts for difference, most Americans are not familiar with this idea of a CFD. CFD is basically a bet between two parties. I bet the price of Apple shares are going to go up. You bet the price of Apple shares are going to go down. We record the price at this very moment, and at the settlement of time of the bet, whoever won the bet is handed the cash representing the difference in the price. So no shares ever traded hands, but whoever wins the bet receives the cash, in this case, from somebody else. A lot of people invest in Bitcoin using this CFD model. They never take possession of the Bitcoin. They just use this CFD to make a bet in the UK. One of the biggest benefits of this, besides not having to take possession or manage Bitcoin, is that the profits aren't taxed as income. They're considered gambling winnings, which is not taxable in the UK. Sounds crazy, right? Well, I think this is part of why the UK government is not very bullish on these derivative contracts, because of the way they're regulated as gambling. They don't, one, the losses tend to be crazy high, right? The government has touted a statistic which says that 85% of retail customers lose money on these derivative contracts. So I actually have this theory that the less consumers are investing in derivatives and the more they're investing in the underlying assets, long or short, the more bullish this is going to be for these underlying markets over time. I think there's going to be significantly less market manipulation. I think there's going to be a lot less professional investors taking advantage of retail investors. And for users like our typical users, I think this is a very bullish update. Personally, I'm not very much in favor of governments getting overly involved in where consumers choose to spend their money. If somebody wants to go to a casino and lose a bunch of money, I think it's their right. I don't think it's very smart, but it's their right. Um, and I don't think the government should be involved in that. But obviously, the government doesn't really care what I think, and they're going to do what they're going to do. Okay, so I mentioned before China. As you know, China dominates cryptocurrency mining. So, from my perspective, the Chinese government is actually highly incentivized for crypto to succeed on a few different levels. Right. First of all, it's an interesting hedge against the U.S. dollar's dominance. Second, they have an economic incentive now, given the amount of the high percentage of their economy which is now involved in cryptocurrency, blockchain, Bitcoin mining oriented projects. And a lot of them are taking advantage of clean energy capabilities, whether it's hydroelectric power or whatever's going on. So there's a really interesting article that I read in CoinDesk last week that said a branch of Chinese state television that has hundreds of millions of viewers recently did a segment on cryptocurrencies in which it discussed Ethereum, Bitcoin, and DeFi amongst other topics. So the segment purportedly covered how digital assets are the best performing asset class year to date, outperforming gold and stocks. Now, this is a big deal for the Chinese government's backed state media to overtly come out and talk about how high performing cryptocurrencies, in particular Ethereum, have been this year. And obviously, this is super bullish for Ethereum because there's a lot of people out there that simply aren't familiar with this stuff, and the fact that the government's talking about it is going to be a big deal, right? So we'll see how that continues to develop over the coming weeks and months. But right now, I see that as a super bullish development for crypto in general. Okay, so so again, if you've got questions either on anything going on with Abra, we're going to have Charlie on in a moment. Please tee up your questions for Charlie, and and we'll be sure to get as many of those as we can. I already see a bunch of them here coming in, so I think we've got Charlie teed up and ready to go. So we'll give him a few seconds and then we'll go live with him. Let's see here how we're doing. So, all right, Charlie, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Give me 1 second. Let me fix my video.
All right. Well, we're all here for you. So give him a second, and as soon as he's ready, we'll switch to him. And let's see. So as I said, the things we want to talk to Charlie about what's going on in the Litecoin community, what's going on with the Mimblewimble upgrade, some of his recent comments about privacy as it relates to Bitcoin and Litecoin and Bitcoin fungibility. And so, there's a lot to talk about there. So I think we've got Charlie now. Let me see here on the streaming side. So, all right, so that's the demo. Where are we on Zoom? There we go. All right, Charlie, how you doing, bud?
Good, good.
All right,
How's it
welcome.
going?
Oh, it's going great. It's going great. Welcome. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while.
Yeah. Hey, so why don't we get right into it? Everybody here that follows Abra knows you as the founder of Litecoin. You've been involved in crypto since before that. I think you were an engineer even at Coinbase and or director of engineering at Coinbase. And so, you've seen like a huge evolution or a significant evolution in crypto over the past kind of, since the beginning. What's your take on the current state of cryptocurrencies? What have we gotten right? What have we gotten wrong? And what do you think the key coming developments are?
Wow, start off with a really big question. Um, so yeah, I've been in this space since 2011. Um, it's definitely grown a lot bigger than I expected. I thought Bitcoin will become big, um, but it's become quite big quite fast. Like I think if I remember correctly, in 2011, I thought it was a um, like a $200 million market cap coin. I thought we'd hit like $5,000 in like 10, 15 years.
Hmm.
And, and that I thought at that time that was a really crazy prediction, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin price was $30 when I first found it, dropped to like $2. So saying it's going to hit 5,000, like 100 plus, maybe 1,000 times increase is crazy. But we actually exceed that already in less than 10 years. So um, yeah, so it's kind of been a wild ride.
Yep. Yep. What do you think that the development community has gotten mostly right as it relates to crypto, and what do you think we've maybe gotten not so right that we need to address?
Um, Development community. I mean, one of the big things was like the scaling debate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I feel like we got that right, but we definitely went through a lot of um, hardships to get to where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from my point of view, this is because um, like initially Bitcoin was worked for everyone, right? It was like best in everything. It was cheap, fast, secure, decentralized. And then as it grew, it kind of had to kind of pick and choose what's most important, right? Is it security, decentralization most important, or is it cheap and fast most important? And the community decided that the value of Bitcoin was because of of its decentralization and security. So that's why there was a scaling debate, and then that's why the um, like the Bitcoin Cash group split off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so that was tough. That was hard, but I think we ended up on the right side.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Now, you've talked a lot about fungibility, privacy, and kind of at the same time almost. Can you talk about your feelings on these? How do they relate to Litecoin, Bitcoin, and what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that I feel like Bitcoin and Litecoin uh, is missing. Since the beginning, I saw Bitcoin as kind of like digital gold, right? It's kind
Hmm.
of the best form of money. Gold was before fiat came along. Gold was used as money, right?
Hmm.
As people transact with gold, um, and then Bitcoin came along. I saw it as just a better form of gold, right? It's similar to gold with similar properties. It's scarce. It's valuable, and it's cheap compared to gold. It's cheap to transfer and also cheap to store. Um, so except for one property of money that Bitcoin didn't do well, which is fungibility. It's the idea that every Bitcoin is exactly the same as every other Bitcoin. So if I pay you with my Bitcoins, it doesn't matter which Bitcoin I choose. But that's not the case with Bitcoin and Litecoin today, right? There's the technically speaking, there's like the UTXO. If you choose like an output, for example, like if I bought 10 Bitcoins off an exchange and then I sent some coins to you to pay for whatever, right? Or to buy coffee, you can see that I recently just bought 10 Bitcoins off an exchange, and you can
Hmm.
almost figure out exactly how much money I have
Right.
in my account. And that's not very fungible, right? It's like if I took $20 bill out of my pocket and gave it to you, you can see how much I have in my bank account, and that's not really
Sure.
good money.
Right. That doesn't really
So
make
I think
sense.
that's something that we eventually have to fix, have to overcome, and that's something that I'm actually actively working on for Litecoin.
Okay. Let's segue into that. So, how do you achieve this fungibility so that one Litecoin is equal to every other Litecoin, and anybody who's trying to trace the history of your transaction slash wallet comes up empty-handed? How does that work?
Yeah, so there's I guess there's two aspects of that, right? So fungibility and privacy kind of go hand in hand. So if your payment is not private, then it's not fungible, right? If you so there's two parts of that, right? There's the kind of the amount part where you don't want people to see how much money you're moving around, and then there's also uh, the linkability, right? You don't want your current transaction to link to your previous transactions. Um, so one technology we're looking to solve the amount part is to use confidential transaction. This was introduced to Bitcoin many years ago, and it's implemented in Liquid. It's also implemented in Mimblewimble, which is a
Hmm.
technology we're looking into. So coins like Grin and Beam have it. The basic idea is that the is blinded. It's not visible to the public.
Hmm.
But if you're transacting, if you're the sender or receiver, you know how much it is, right? How much you're sending, and the receiver knows how much they're receiving, and everyone else is able to cryptographically ensure that a certain amount was sent and a certain amount was received, and no coins were printed out of thin air, but they don't know the exact number.
Right. So how does this relate to how Zcash works and ZK snarks and that underlying technology? And are you committed now to this Mimble Wimble slash privacy upgrade to Litecoin? You meaning the Litecoin community, based on your
Yeah,
understanding?
yeah. So Zcash actually is the anonymity and privacy in Zcash is actually stronger than Mimblewimble. The downside with Zcash is that it bloats the blockchain a lot. It's
Hmm.
not very scalable. Like transaction sizes are an order or more magnitudes larger than what they currently are.
Right.
So we decided to go with. So I looked into all these technologies, and one of the things that confidential transaction I thought was really good, except that size is also larger. But then there's the bulletproofs
Hmm.
that makes size smaller, and Mimblewimble also added the ability to have cut through where you can have more privacy by dropping like intermediate transactions. Um, and yeah, so we decided to go with Mimblewimble, and the community is really on board with it. We actually recently launched a testnet for it. So we hired a developer who was working on Grin++, one of the clients of Grin, to work on this extension block idea for Mimblewimble. We call
Hmm.
it MWeb, um, which stands for Mimblewimble Extension Block. The idea is that extension blocks are kind of like side chains, but they're like attached to the main chain. So they're mined
Okay.
by the same miners.
Hmm.
You can move coins between the main chain and the extension block. So, for example, I can move one Litecoin from the main chain to the extension block. Then I have one Litecoin on the Mimblewimble side of things. And once I'm there, everything is using confidential transaction, and all the transactions are through the Mimblewimble protocol. And then if I want to, I can also move that coin back out using like a peg out. So I can peg one Litecoin back out into the main chain.
Hmm.
So I imagine certain exchanges or most exchanges would not want to support the Mimblewimble side of things. Some might, but they can just continue to support the main chain. And if you want to trade coins, you just peg your coins back out to the main chain. And if you want to be more fungible and be more private, then you can move your coins into the Mimblewimble extension block.
So, would you consider these extension blocks to be on chain in the sense that things are on chain via a normal mempool today, or is it a different concept altogether?
If you ask different people, they have different ideas. But from my point of view, they're on chain, right? They're just a separate chain.
Yep.
Um, but you can consider it like layer 2 or layer 1.5 solution because they're separate from the current main chain, right? So it's quite similar to Liquid. So Liquid is a federated sidechain.
Hmm.
Um, Mimblewimble extension block is a miner enforced sidechain um, that is kind of attached, right? So there's no, you can't, once the soft fork happens, then MWeb would exist alongside with Litecoin main chain. So yeah, I can consider it like a 1.5
Okay.
solution.
So that's a good answer. What about regulation, right? I mean, this has been an amazing couple of weeks, right? Hearing other rumors about more to come, which I won't get into now. But I think one of the things that has been front and center uh, for various regulators, particularly in the U.S., is this idea of privacy, right? The IRS had this insane announcement that they're literally paying contractors to try to break Monero and Zcash privacy and cryptographic, primitives. Um, I've been working in technology, cryptography, and financial payments for 30 years. I've never seen anything like it. What is your
Mhm.
take on how what's going on from a regulatory perspective should or shouldn't affect your roadmap? And are you concerned about these actions vis-a-vis what you just said?
Yeah, so like before starting off this path, I've actually reached out to most of like the major exchanges
Hmm.
to kind of start the conversation, talk to them about what they think about this idea of doing like um, more privacy fungibility on like an extension block. And they've pretty much all gotten back to me and said they feel like it's okay, like in terms of regulation, that they won't do something drastic like delist Litecoin because there's this optional kind of upgrade, right? This optional extension block that people can use. Um, it's kind of, oh, give me 1 second. Yeah. So what I was saying is they, I don't think it's, I mean, there's obviously a risk, right? Certain jurisdictions have said like pretty much no to any privacy coins. So any coins that advertise as there's any kind of privacy, they will ask exchanges to delist them, and then we've seen that happen. There's definitely certain risks, but I think it's a pretty safe upgrade in terms of the regulatory side of things.
Okay.
Uh, but I also feel like financial privacy is a right that we should have,
Sure.
um, and I would fight for that,
Hmm.
for people to have their right for
Well,
privacy.
let me ask you this a different way, right? So it was interesting that your first response to the question about Mimblewimble and how it might relate to the Litecoin upgrade was your conversation with exchanges. Let's
Hmm.
say, just hypothetically, all of the exchanges came back and said, whoa, we're super afraid of what the regulators might do or say about any crypto going forward being as private or as secure as Zcash or Monero, and maybe if they had it to do over again, they wouldn't even allow them. I don't know if that's true, but let's just say for the sake of argument they did that. Would that be a good enough reason not to do the upgrade?
Um, so step back a little bit. We've actually gone like the opposite direction, right? Where like you see Gemini launching with Zcash, and
Hmm.
also now starting to have like Zcash shielded transaction or shielded withdrawals. So I think we're moving towards a more private like
Hmm.
place, right? World
Sure.
where this is seen as something that's good and not just for criminals. Um, but that said, if it's definitely tricky, right? So a coin that doesn't have any liquidity is not that useful, right? If you
Mm.
can't, like, if something that's extremely private, really good with privacy, but it's hard for you to get access to it, it's not very useful money, right?
Right.
I mean, sort of one example is Monero is sort of kind of like that, right? Where I think it's great, it's a great privacy coin, but it's not very liquid, right?
Mm.
It's hard to get Monero on the exchange. It's hard to acquire them. Um, so I definitely don't want Litecoin to go there. I don't want to like do something that's uh, makes it super private and all of a sudden like all the exchanges delist Litecoin and makes it really hard for anyone to get hold of it,
Sure.
right? So it's a tricky balance. We kind of want to work within the current financial system,
Yep.
um, but
Yep.
then we also want to kind of push the boundary.
Yep. Where do you see Litecoin versus Bitcoin 5 years from now? Why do both need to exist?
Um, like when I first launched it, I always like kind of position it as silver to Bitcoin's gold, right? Everyone knows that. Um, I see kind of like a complementary relationship between Bitcoin and Litecoin, as we saw with like SegWit, for example. Litecoin was able to activate SegWit first, and
Hmm.
then that helped show that, because before that there was a lot of like FUD, a lot of people saying SegWit, there's lots of issues with it. It's going to fail if it activates Bitcoin. People, if it activated on Bitcoin, miners can steal all the coins from the SegWit addresses.
Hmm.
But once after it activated on Litecoin, and there was like millions of dollars of coins on SegWit addresses, and miners weren't able to steal it, people were a lot more comfortable with the idea that SegWit is actually safe and actually works
Sure.
well.
Sure.
Um, so that kind of stuff is um, is great because Litecoin can be more can take more risks. It has a smaller market cap. It can move a little bit faster, so it can do stuff like integrate or with activate SegWit, and also like what we're doing right now with Mimblewimble. This is something that um, it would just be very hard for Bitcoin to do because it's so drastic, right?
Right.
Doing a Mimblewimble extension block. That's not something that you can the Bitcoin community would be open to it at this time.
Yeah.
But so Litecoin can try something different, try something a little bit more risky, and see what happens.
Right. Right. And if you go like another, you know, um, 4 or 5 years out, do you see a bifurcation in terms of, let's say, how would I say, like using Litecoin for P2P and Bitcoin as gold? Or do you see that Litecoin really evolves as a test bed for all the great things that we would want to do in Bitcoin? Is it all of the above? I mean, how do you think about that?
I think in the long term, we wouldn't like people using money wouldn't actually care or understand what goes on behind the scenes.
Hmm.
So um, it's similar, like it's people view like Bitcoin as like a protocol, right?
Hmm.
They compare it to like TCP/IP, for example. So it's similar to like TCP/IP and UDP, right? You're watching Netflix, you don't really care, you don't even know if it's using UDP, TCP/IP, or something else, right? All you know is that there's like bits streamed to you and you're watching this movie. And I think the same thing would happen with money, where you're storing value in something. It may be Bitcoin, it may be a basket of cryptocurrencies or something else, right? You don't really care. All you care is that it's a store of value and that you can easily transfer that value to someone else to pay
Mm.
for goods and services or anything, right? So in terms of like the technical aspects, we're seeing like things like atomic swaps and over like Lightning Network, stuff like that could work seamlessly where you can have Bitcoin or you can have Litecoin and merchant says Bitcoin and you can like swap it on the fly and pay for anything you want.
Yep. Yep.
So I see that being built out. It might take many years, but um, I think it's going to be pretty cool.
I think so too. Fantastic. Um, yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I could talk to you for hours. You've answered a lot of the questions from the audience. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
If people want to learn more about what's going on with the Litecoin community, where's the best place for them to go to do that?
Um, Follow us on Twitter. So my handle is at Satoshi Light. Litecoin Foundation's handle is at LTC Foundation. We have a Telegram group that I'm in chat occasionally. Let's see, what else do we have? Sign up for a newsletter and also um, litecoin-foundation.org is the website, so you
Yep.
can check that out also.
So if
Yeah,
people are incentivized, they're going to find you guys. Is
yeah,
the bottom
yeah,
line. Great, great.
yeah.
All right. So I'm excited. I want to have you back. Pretty soon. I want to see what happens with Mimblewimble. I'm really excited about it. I hope that the Bitcoin community also takes notice of this. I love that you guys are doing this first. I agree with your comments on SegWit. I also think that in general, Litecoin is unique because I really see it as the silver, but even other altcoins, I see the technology competition as essential to the advancement of even Bitcoin long term, because there's a lot of things, like you said, that the core community is simply not going to want to do first, or if at all, or maybe they're not sure, right? There's a raging
Yeah.
tech debate like we had with 2x. So, anyway, thank you for your efforts on behalf of the entire crypto community. We hope you continue to be motivated, incentivized, whatever the right word is, to keep doing what you're doing. We're very
Sure.
lucky to have people like you doing what you're doing, and on behalf of the community, thank you very much for your efforts, and wish you well. And obviously, we'll see you on the interwebs and on Twitter. And thanks again for agreeing to do this on short notice.
Sure. Thanks, Phil. Good luck with Abra and also your interest-bearing accounts that you recently launched.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Charlie. All
All right.
right. Cool. All right. So thanks to Charlie for that. And we've got, thanks for the questions for Charlie. That really helped me a lot. And we will get to more of those. If you want to follow up with Charlie, just follow him at Satoshi Light on Twitter. I'll thank him on Twitter. So if you're following me, you can just see his link there. But we've got a bunch of questions that we've been teeing up for the last, actually for the last day and a half. So let's see, we've got people, I think, in like 20 countries, as best we can tell here. listening in. Probably more, but sometimes it's hard to tell. But lots of places. Okay, let's see. What's so special about NFT and the future it brings? This is a comment I made online about NFT. NFTs are a form of smart contract. So ERC20 tokens, like a lot of the tokens you buy in Abra, are a smart contract called ERC20. And then there's another ERC standard for NFTs. I forget the number. It's like 927 or something like that. I've been wrong. I'm sure one of you will correct me. NFTs stands for non-fungible tokens. ERC20 tokens, for example, are meant to be fungible. So if I have, one ADA Cardano and it's an ERC20 token, they're all equal, right? An NFT would be like a collectible where if I own this particular collectible, this particular baseball card, it's not equal to this other collectible. And so these NFTs, I think, have a huge future because they're going to enable all kinds of collectible assets, digital arts, in-gaming assets, virtual world assets of the kind we've never seen before because they've always been company specific. And now with this NFT model, people can use, thank you, ERC 721 is the standard. And so these ERC 721 tokens will enable all kinds of tradable digital assets online that were very difficult to do before Ethereum existed. What are my thoughts on the Square announcement? Catherine asks, jump to the bottom of the list here. So Catherine, very interesting announcement. Square announced yesterday that they're taking 1% of their treasury and putting it in Bitcoin, which amounts to about $50 million as of the investment yesterday morning. I'm guessing it's more today. So that's phenomenal news for the space. According to my research, there's something like 5 or 6 public companies now, publicly traded companies that have some portion of their treasury in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. That is a big deal. So that number will continue to grow over time, right? So as that number continues to grow, what happens is Bitcoin comes out of circulation, and as Bitcoin comes out of circulation, it becomes even more scarce, which should drive the price up and make it an even better investment asset, which should create a network effect, right? So we'll see how this continues to evolve over time. And so phenomenal question. Thank you. Very timely. Let's see, what else do we have here? I have some Abra specific questions. Um, let's see. Will Abra users be receiving coins from the upcoming Bitcoin Cash fork? So I'll give you a generic answer. Anytime there's a hard fork in any of the crypto assets that exist on Abra, we look with our custody partners as to what's happening with those forks. There's lots of forks that you don't even hear about. Kids at MIT, for example, can just decide on a weekend they got nothing to do, so they can fork Bitcoin, create a new project, and it'll die 4 weeks later. Okay, we can't make every one of those forks available to you. So there's nothing that makes one fork any more important from a software perspective than any other fork, except for the community behind it and the interest behind it. So if we see significant interest in the community and our custody partner wants to support that fork, we can make it available to you. It's as simple as that. And that's assuming that there's no legal issue, which generally there isn't with most of these forks. Okay, so I realize that's a little bit of a vague answer, but it really has to be that way because there's so many forks going on at any given time. Okay, so let's see. By the way, we have a winner for today's giveaway. Crypto Rhythm S at _ Rhythm S29 is the winner for our crypto giveaway. Had basically 3 questions or 3 comments for today's show. What has become of CT Crypto Twitter? What's so special about NFT, which I already talked about? And 2020 shaping up to be the same as 2017? I assume by CT Crypto Twitter, you mean what's happening with the Twitter community as it relates to cryptocurrencies. I would say there's a few different things going on. It's a huge community, right? You can get a feel for the magnitude of the community just by looking at different Reddit channels, which often link back to Twitter. But the crypto Twitter community is alive and well. It's actually multiple communities, right? You've got the economists or the couch and armchair economists, people who want to be economists, who are pontificating on the future of crypto. You have the actual technologists, the software developers, the software engineers that are doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes, that are having raging debates about what to do to make all this stuff better. You've got the intersection between them. You have the corporate stuff like where Abra plays, where people are promoting our capabilities to help you, the consumer, get access. All this stuff is still going on. It's fantastic, and the more of this we have going on, the more information that is out there for all of you to make informed decisions. 2017 versus 2020, I see this as very, very different. 2017, there was this big ICO boom. It caused a lot of like funny money and speculation that was just not healthy. There's way less of that, almost none of it going on now, which is great. The fundamentals for Bitcoin are night and day better now than they were in 2017. Institutional interest, the number of companies involved. I mentioned some of them in the newsletter this week. None of these companies were really looking at even Bitcoin back 2017. It was 100% retail consumer phenomenon. That's not true anymore. So I'm much more bullish now on where we are than I was in 2017. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you so much for that, and we'll get in touch with you on your contest winnings. So we've got some more questions here. Let me just pick a couple at random. So let's see. Can Abra access wallets for easy money transfer nationwide? I'm not really sure, Akash, what that question means. I'll provide a couple of answers. One, in the US, you can use Abra. Actually, you can use Abra as a money transfer product just by basically holding a stable coin. If you send a stable coin from the US to somebody outside the US, they'll actually either receive that stable coin or if you want to basically convert it to your local currency. So, for example, we have a lot of users in the Philippines. They can receive dollars and easily convert those dollars to Philippine pesos and cash out the pesos to a bank account. So it's very easy to use Abra as a simple global money transfer vehicle. You can also withdraw your cash as even Bitcoin. So you can just convert it to Bitcoin and withdraw it to an external wallet. So there's lots of ways to get money in, send money, get money out, right? So it's a very much a powerful money transfer tool in addition to an investing tool. Let's see. So what else do we have here? Let's see. We talked about Mimblewimble. Thanks for those questions. Lots of questions about Mimblewimble. Interesting to see the mix of technology questions and investing questions we get here. And we try to create a healthy mix, but keep the questions coming. What is my opinion on the crypto derivative sales being banned in the UK? As I said, it's probably a healthy thing for retail investors on the one hand, meaning most of you. On the other hand, I don't really like governments injecting themselves unnecessarily into other people's business. And this is an example of that. I feel that if an educated person wants to gamble and leverage themselves on a derivative on Bitcoin, they should be allowed to do that. And I don't think the government should stop me from being able to do that. But like I've said many, many times, it doesn't really matter what I think. I'm just one person. Generally, when it comes to financial regulation, they're going to do what they're going to do. And so probably healthy for Bitcoin in general. But again, we prefer less regulation in general rather than more regulation, if that makes sense. Let's see, what else? Lots of questions. What are the ongoing features of Abra related to the introduction of cryptocurrencies in different corners of the world? This is from Nika. I'm not really sure I totally understand the question. Generally, the Abra features in the product are the same in every country. So if you're looking at this Abra app that I have here, it's pretty much the same everywhere in the world. And so I'm not really sure what you mean by different. The only real difference is we do look at cash deposits and bank deposits on a country by country basis because each country's banking system works differently. So that's something that we will work on more and more over time. So depending upon your home country, you may see slightly different features from a banking perspective. Okay. Let's see. So I lost my demo. So while I'm answering your next question, I will try to bring back the demo. So another question here. Um, is Abra looking to add more cryptocurrencies to the interest-bearing accounts, such as Monero or Zcash or XRP? Excellent question. We're looking very hard at all major cryptocurrencies to add them to interest-bearing accounts. It's very demand-driven, which means that the more demand we have, the easier it is to add. So please keep your requests coming. That influences what we do and which cryptocurrencies we add to the list that you see on your right-hand side of the screen here. Okay, so thanks for that. Um, let's see. Are you going to realize or release your own token, for example, an Abra token? That's from Aki again. Aki, you've got lots of questions today. So, good question. I'm smiling because I really have nothing to say on that right now. It's an interesting idea, but I'm not, even if we were going to do it, I wouldn't talk about it until it was available. So, all I can say is keep coming back, and maybe at some point you'll get a different answer. Let's see. So can you please discuss Akash asks, can I get this, please discuss staking new crypto assets? So staking is not something that Abra supports yet. Its staking is similar to our interest account. We've actually looked at adding staking supporting assets to the interest account so that we can give you the interest earned via staking, and that's something that I hope that we can add in the near term to the app. It's actually a fairly complex thing to do, but I would like to do it. We want you to make every penny possible through the Abra app, and so that's something we'd like to add. And while you're basically taking principal risk on an asset, for example, like an EOS, you can actually earn more EOS, right? So that's always interesting. So we'll see how that evolves over time. Let's see. Can you please discuss the safety and security features of the Abra wallets? One of my favorite topics. I would gladly do that. So let me do that really quick because we're running out of time. So a couple of things, right? I think that Abra is the most secure crypto wallet in existence that allows you to earn interest and trade at the same time. Why do I think that's the case? Because one, we don't store passwords. So Abra does not have passwords, even encrypted passwords, on a server at all. The way the app works is when you install the Abra app, you get a private key, like a key to your front door of your house, that's stored digitally on your phone. I have no access to that key as Abra. Abra cannot access that key. When you start the Abra app, and I'll log out and I'll show you, okay? When I start the Abra app here, and I type in my PIN code, which you can't see, but I'm doing on my screen, that PIN code uses the private key to unlock my app, okay? So if I lose that private key, I actually have no access to the app. Now, what happens if I lose my phone? Good question. So now the first time you run Abra, the app is going to ask you to back up your key. And the way you do that is by writing down I think it's a 14-word phrase. I don't remember how many words. I'm not going to show you the backup phrase here because then you can access the funds by restoring the wallet. Once you have that backup phrase and you install Abra again, you simply type in that backup phrase and your entire wallet is recreated because the key is now on your phone again. I hope that makes sense. It would be like the key that you have, you basically give somebody else instructions. You write down instructions on a piece of paper as to how to make a new key so that if you lose the key to your house, you can go to the locksmith and they can cut a new key for you. words that you write down, that backup phrase, is effectively the same thing. It allows a locksmith to effectively create a new digital key for your phone. Okay, so you don't want to give that backup phrase to anyone, because if you do, they can create a key very easily to get access to your Abra app. So Abra is way more secure than any other custodial app out there that I'm aware of for this reason. Okay, um, the service has never been hacked, and we spend a lot of time thinking about best of breed security. Our own crypto that we use for our own purposes is mostly in cold storage. It's not online, so even if you did hack our servers, for example, there'd be no crypto to steal. Okay, so good question. Love the security questions. It's something that we take very seriously at Abra. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Lots of questions as always. So, how is Abra able to pay such a high interest rate on US dollars? Abra's paying 10% today. So, that's a good question. So the reason that we're able to pay such a high rate is that when you deposit into Abra, we're lending, similar to how a bank lends your money out to institutional business partners who then generate that yield that we pay to you. Now, unlike banks who keep like 90+% of that yield for themselves, we pay like over 80% of that yield back to you. So that's why you're generating 10%, not Abra. Okay. So we do a lot of work to vet those investors who are borrowing those funds, and they're usually putting up what we call collateral. And collateral basically means that if they're borrowing dollars, they're actually giving us Bitcoin so that if the borrower doesn't make the payment, we actually sell the Bitcoin, for example. Or if they're borrowing Bitcoin, we may ask them to put dollars in the account. And so if they don't pay back the Bitcoin, we'll use the dollars, for example, to buy back the Bitcoin or something like that. So we've never had losses on these because of the way the collateral and the vetting process works. And we will continue to be relatively conservative, but still pass on the majority of the interest earned to you so that we can continue to offer these really high rates. So I hope that makes sense. I really love the Abra interest product. I use it now to manage most of my cash, and I will continue to do so. All right. Um, so Hemok says, when I mentioned to others that Abra provides 10% interest on USD, they are initially very skeptical and deem that it is risky. So this is the point that I just addressed, Hemok. I would tell people that basically this is Abra is doing something similar to what a bank might do on its own, with three differences. One, the funds are not insured, so we should be clear about that. You are taking risk with the funds, but the way we make loans is not dissimilar to how a bank makes a loan. So that's point number two. Point number three is, in this case, most of the interest is going to you as opposed to going to the bank. And you should send people to abra.com. They can send us an email to support. If they have questions about the risk, we're happy to answer those questions. And yeah, and we're happy to talk about those risks anytime. I got another question here from Richard. What is interest earning PAX? He saw that on my screen. If you come over here, you see at the top, there's a whole bunch of PAX here. PAX is a USD stablecoin created by Paxos. It's like Tether or USDC. It's a stablecoin where they actually hold dollars in a bank, like USDC or Tether. It's simply called PAX. It's their name for their US dollar stablecoin. So you've got True USD, you've got Tether, USDC, PAX, all basically working more or less the same way from a technology perspective. Okay, so good question there. If you see something on the screen that doesn't make sense, please shout it out, and we're happy to discuss. Okay, let's see what else. We have a lot of questions here. I'm going to try to jump around a little bit. Why do wires take often a day to hit my account? Tony asks. Tony, it depends on a few different things. When you wire money into Abra, it depends upon the time of day that you do the wire. So for example, the worst case scenario would be I initiate a wire on like Friday night. I might not get it until like Monday afternoon or even Tuesday morning. That's a function of the fact that this stuff isn't processed on weekends. We're not the bank, so the bank has to process the wire. It also has to do with the amount. So sometimes higher amounts, because we're storing these as stable coins, you're actually getting true USD in your Abra app when you do a wire. And the wire has to be converted by Trust Token into true USD. So that takes a little bit of time, not much time, but we're trying to push the envelope and getting that time frame compressed and down as much as possible. So stay tuned. Hopefully, we'll be able to get that time even better. But it's pretty reasonable right now, um, and we'll get better over time. Victor asks, do you have defaults on these loans? And is that something you can talk about? So Victor, we've never had a default on a loan at Abra, and the reason is I would say there's several reasons. I'll give you the two biggest ones in the interest of time. One, we have a very strict vetting process on borrowers. And by vetting process, we dig into the founders, the balance sheet, the use of funds, the history of the company, other loans. And then two, we look at collateral requirements. These are usually crypto collateralized loans. And that is a big advantage versus other forms of collateral. Because if you don't make the loan payment, it's very easy to sell crypto, as you know, if you use Abra, right? So collateral requirements are commensurate with the risk analysis that we do. And a lot of times, once we tell the partner what the collateral requirements are or what the higher interest rate is, they'll opt out and they won't do the loan with Abra. And that's perfectly fine with us. We're not the cheapest party to do business with when it comes to borrowing. And we may often have higher collateral requirements than banks or other parties. That's fine with us. We have no problem with that. We're going to continue to be as reasonably conservative as we need to be to ensure that we don't get defaults in the system and that we can continue to pay these high rates. I would actually add one more thing to that. We don't have a huge dependency on any one loan. So this is federated across a huge number of loans. So while we've never had a default, if we did have one, most of you wouldn't even notice it because it would be federated across such a large pool of deposits. I hope that makes sense. Banks get defaults on loans all the time, and generally you don't see them because, again, no one loan is actually going to make an impact on everyone's deposits. And Abra is no different in this regard. Okay, hope that makes sense. All right, so we are going on 1 p.m. Eastern time. I'm on the East Coast this week, so I think we'll take one more question and then call it a day. Let's see. Let's see. We have any more? A lot of questions here. Um, let's see. William asks, do I think there's going to be a Fed coin? I have no idea. I mean, there's so many governments looking at issuing their own dollar tokens or their own fiat currency tokens. I don't know who's going to be first. There's rumors that China's going to be first. We'll see what happens. I don't want to end on that one. Let's pick another one. Let's see. Virginia. Okay, Virginia asks, I got a new phone. My account, my Abra wallet is on my old phone. How do I go about transferring the wallet to the new phone? Okay, Virginia, very important. As I said, the first thing you're going to do right now, stop what you're doing. Go into your old phone, start up the Abra app, click on the menu. You see where it says Wallet Security, fourth line down. Click on Wallet Security. You're going to click on View Recovery Phrase. You're going to write down that recovery phrase. You're going to go to your new phone. When you install Abra there, you're going to restore Abra by typing in that recovery phrase, and voila, your Abra wallet will be recreated on the new phone. I hope this makes sense. If you're using iPhone and you're backing up your iPhone and you restore to a new phone, you should get the wallet restored, but please write down the recovery phrase anyway, especially if you're an Android user. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to take one more. I know I said I'd stop. Richard asks, just hot off the presses, what is the best way to buy Bitcoin? If I want to purchase, say, $10,000 to $15,000 of Bitcoin, is it better to buy on Abra or some kind of exchange? Perfect question. Super easy. two ways to buy 15K of Bitcoin and Abra. The first is you can add money via ACH, and using ACH, you'd have to probably do 3 or 4 transfers over 4 days into the Abra wallet, or you sign up for BankWire and you can do one wire of $15,000. Once you go into the portfolio and you have your dollars here, you can simply press the exchange button at the bottom of the screen, and you can convert your USD to Bitcoin by just typing in the amount here. There's no transaction fee for doing that. We give very good rates. And voila, you have your Bitcoin. So, Richard, I highly encourage you to use Abra for that. All right, folks. 1 o'clock. Great show. Thank you, Charlie, for joining us. We really appreciate it on behalf of the entire Abra community. Yeah, so have a great weekend, everyone. And let's go Bitcoin to the moon. We're over 11,000, and let's hope we stay there for a while. And yeah, we'll see you next week on Money Talks. Take care, everyone.